crashing, hit a wall. Right now I need a miracle. Hurry up now, I need a miracle. Stranded, reaching out. I call your name but you're not around. I say your name but you're not around. I need ya, I need ya, I need you right now. Yeah, I need you right now. So don't let me down. I think I'm losing my mind now. It's in my head, darling, I hope that you'll be here when I need you the most. So don't let me down. Don't let me down. Yeah, don't let me down. Yeah, don't let me
Hello and welcome everyone for today's session. I'm super excited to start the sessions over with you again. Welcome everyone for our SFX Academy Derivatives 101 complete introduction course, and I'm excited to have all of you here, whoever is watching it live or whoever will decide to watch it on the recordings. Today our plan is to repeat a little bit of the information that we discussed last time because I want to present it to you in a complete way. So today we're gonna cover more information in a more understandable, clear and complete way. So every single one of you can fully understand, can fully memorize what derivatives are and have an idea of how you can use it for your own benefits, right? Financial system around the world bases a lot on the derivatives, so it's important to know how derivatives work to be able to understand how the economic system works, and also to be able to know how to speculate potentially on them to get the potential profits out of it or hedge the risk using the derivatives, which we are going to talk about today. So today, for some of you who've been watching the first class, today some of the information will already repeat itself, but we're also going to cover some more information, and we're gonna learn about the options, call options, put options. We are going to talk also about the swaps and why the swaps are necessary for the economical system around the world and why are they in the heart of multiple financial operations. And we're gonna come closer to one of the most important things, which we will continue with forward and futures contracts. So this is today's plan. For every single one of you who are here for the first time, who are watching it live, remember to ask questions in the chat box. In the end of our today's session, I will come back to our chat box and answer all the questions that you will have to be able to fulfill all the needs of yours for the information about derivatives. Okay, I already see one question in the chat box where the Trading Alchemist is asking to give the futures tool that I mentioned in the recent bootcamp. The tools we will cover after we will complete the full Derivatives 101 course. I need you to understand that we cannot talk about the trading derivatives and trading futures until we know how futures function, right? How functions a platform where you can find this tool. So we're gonna go step by step from the basics to the advanced knowledge and skill set and building it step by step up. So every single one of you who is here new and hears about derivatives, futures, options, and so on for the first time can completely understand it, and we're gonna make it super easy for every single one of you to learn and to apply this knowledge in practice. All right, So let's get started again. So if this is $100 billion, so this is 1 square is $100 billion, then this is how much you would need to buy Apple right now, today. This is the worth of gold all around the world. This is the GDP of the entire world, and this is their value of the full financial derivatives around the world at this current moment. Derivatives become the biggest asset class in the world, so you should probably have an understanding of what they are, what are their functions, and why there are so many of them. And if you don't know anything about derivatives, good news for you, this is what we are going to learn today. So sit back, relax, grab some popcorn, and of course something to make some notes and listen. So the word derivative comes from the word derive, which comes from the Latin word derivare, which means obtain from, or, well, it depends. In a core of it, the derivative is a contract, the value of which is based on something else. Okay? Any security whose value is determined by or derived from the value of another asset. And which kind of asset, or what is this something else? Because it might sound confusing. So what is this something else, and which kind of another asset are we talking about? We are talking about the value of the underlying asset. So the value of any derivative comes from something else, from the underlying asset. Okay? So the derivative contract will derive its value based on the dynamic value of the underlying asset. In case of financial derivatives, it simply means that if you create a piece of paper which derives its value from the underlying asset, this is what financial derivative will be. So the derivative in the end of the day is a contract between two parties betting on the change in price of this underlying asset. Okay? Underlying assets can be on many forms, and the commons are the following. So the stocks, commodities, currencies, bonds, interest rates, market indices, or even other derivative. So again, we are taking something else, so there's something that already has value. It may be the stock, or it may be even the house or the property, or it can be oil, it can be gold, it can be any commodity. It also can be bonds or interest rates, right? Or even another derivative. And from this asset that already has value, we are creating a contract, and this contract is called derivative. Okay? So the most important thing for now is to remember that the value of derivative always depends on the value of the underlying asset. So it comes from the dynamic change of the price of the underlying asset. Okay? Derivative contracts will also include the expiration date. This is a date when the contract agreement ends and any of the differences in the two positions are finally settled. Derivatives will also specify delivery type at the expiration where applicable. So, for example, some derivatives will permit the physical delivery, like you can see on the left side of the screen. Now, we are not talking about the speculation, but we are talking about using the derivative contract as its first meaning was. All right, so physical delivery of some particular asset that one wants to purchase. So this is common, for example, with commodity derivatives. So physical delivery means that at the expiration date, the quantity of the underlying asset, well, it could be again gold, for example, it could be oil, or it could be corn, specified in the contract will actually be physically delivered to the buyer of the contract. Okay, so whatever was said in the contract, this amount of the underlying asset in the end of the contract at the expiration date will be delivered to its buyer. Alternatively to the physical delivery, Many derivatives permit cash settlement, as you can see on the right side of the screen. Cash settled mean that the differences in any long or short positions will be simply settled in cash rather than delivering the underlying asset physically. Okay, it maybe sound a little bit complicated, but the further we go, the more easy it will become. So bear with me. So again, we have the expiration date of the contract. Every single contract has the expiration date. Any type of the derivative contract that we're going to talk about has its typical expiration date, and the expiration date is called maturity date. Again, at the maturity, we have two different options of the delivery, the physical delivery or the cash settlement. All right? So what is the point of derivatives? Why do they even exist? You may be asking. So there are two main uses of any derivative. Using derivatives to hedge risk in the first place, which means using derivatives for the objective of minimizing risk in the physical market. And hedgers seek to limit the risk by using derivatives as insurance policies. Okay? And by this, they are indirectly increasing the profitability. So there are two entirely different ways for the derivatives to be used. The first one is hedging, which in the core of it means minimizing potential risks. Okay? And today in the class, I'm going to show you an example of how the derivative can be used to minimize the potential risk. So bear with me, it's going to become much more easier. And secondary option is speculation. Okay? And speculation of derivatives prices simply means like being motivated by the profit seeking. Okay? Hedging involves protecting the underlying position from potential losses. Hedgers typically have an underlying, for example, long or short position, the portfolio of US stocks, let's say, and in the other world, they profit if the value of the stock goes up. Okay? So if you are holding any kind of stock, so let's say you have a portfolio of US stocks, you will profit if the value of your portfolio, so the stocks go up. However, if you will be any concerned that the stock market will continue to fall, which, hey, it's not a surprise, it's the current market situation, portfolio manager might suggest you to use derivatives to minimize the risk on the underlying positions. For example, you can go short on S&P 500 index futures. So any potential gain or losses on your underlying position can be offset with the potential gains or losses on the derivative contract. And again, if it sounds a little bit complicated, so don't stress, bear with me, we're gonna make it easy. Speculating, on the other hand, stands for taking the view and guess on the potential direction of the underlying asset value and derivative itself, with of course intention of making profits on the change of the price. So it's simply trading in the form that most of you are already familiar with. So now here's an example of how derivatives potentially can be used to hedge the risk. For example, we will take a wheat producer on the left side, which is going to be a seller, and a cereal manufacturer, which is going to be a buyer of the wheat, hedging their exposure to fluctuation of the wheat prices. Okay? In any case, both supply and demand decrease on the price of wheat is bad for the wheat producers because they can get less money from the crops, but it's good for the cereal manufacturers because they can get one of their key inputs at the discount on the discount prices, right? If the wheat prices go down, it's going to be bad for the wheat producers because they're going to be able to make less profits on the same amount of wheat. However, it's going to be good for the cereal manufacturer because they're going to be able to purchase their initial product at the lower prices. All right, so on the other hand, an increase in the price of wheat is good for the wheat producers because, of course, they now can get more money for their crops, but it's going to be bad for the cereal manufacturers because it increases the cost of the production of the cereal. Okay, so it is in the interest of the wheat farmers that the price of the wheat remains high, but it is in the interest of the cereal manufacturers that the price of the wheat remains low. Now let's imagine that the cereal producer expects the price of wheat to fall, and the cereal manufacturer is of the opinion that the prices of wheat is about to rise. So they have the different opinions, entirely different. Okay, again, the cereal manufacturer thinks that the price of wheat is going to go up, and they are afraid of this because they would need to spend more money buying their base products. And the wheat producer expects the price to fall, so they are afraid because they are going to lose potential profits on their main product. So they can enter into a contract fixing the future price of the trade. For example, a wheat producer might agree to sell wheat to a manufacturer in 6 months at the current market price of $12, okay, regardless of what the price of wheat is in 6 months, by locking in the agreed price. So the producer is seeking to protect his or herself against an unexpected decrease of the price of wheat, and on the other hand, the manufacturer is seeking to protect his or herself from an expected increase in prices. So they're entering an agreement, okay, where they agree to trade certain amount of wheat in a pre-discussed time at the pre-discussed price. Okay, so they're looking in the price which is comfortable and accepted for both of them. Now, if the price of wheat falls, the cereal manufacturer, which is our buyer, will wish they had never signed this contract because they could be buying wheat for the cheaper that it says in the contract if they would not sign it. On the other hand, if the price of wheat rises, the producer, who is our seller, will wish that they hadn't signed the contract because they could be selling the wheat for more money now. And because the price of the wheat can only move in 2 directions, so up or down, this example is a zero-sum game possessing both of the distinct winner and a distinct loser. So basically, the interest of only the wheat producer or the cereal manufacturer can be met, and not both. This example, which we are talking about now, is based solely on one specific type of the derivative, and it's called the forward contract, which were used by both parties. This is a zero-sum game, but you may be asking, is it the only way to use derivatives for hedging risk? And the answer is no, because there are more options which take into account interest for both parties. And to understand it better, we're going to discuss different types of derivatives now. So we just discussed the forward contracts, right? So we had the example of the forward contract in front of them. And besides forward contracts, we have 3 different other types of derivatives. We have futures contracts. We have options, which include put options and call options, and we have swaps. So we have 4 main types of the derivatives. Now, there are also the mixed types, so combined types that are being created, but we are going to talk about the 4 main types because the other ones are the combination of those 4. In any case. So we're going to talk about the base foundation of the types of the derivatives. So forward, futures, and swaps. So again, forward, futures, and swaps contracts are all deemed to be forward commitments because both parties of the contract are obligated to deliver. So they are obligated to complete their responsibility towards the contract, toward the second party. Okay? On the other hand, options are often referred to as contingent claims because the contract payout depends on a future event. Why? Because one of the parties of the contract has the opportunity to exercise the option or just simply walk away. So options have one extra burn button. So if the forwards, futures, and swaps are forward commitments, options give alternative to the parties of the contract, whether they want to use the contract or they don't want to use this contract. Okay? So we are going to talk about it in a second, and it's going to become much more clear. Now let's complete the information about the forward contracts before. So the forward contract is a customized contract between two parties to buy or sell an asset at a specified price at a specified future date. Forwards, by the way, are not traded on the central exchange. Therefore, as a result of this, they are not standardized to regulate, making them particularly useful for hedging. So forward contracts are not regulated, they are customized. They can be customized to the preferences of two parties of the sides of the contract. Okay? And in general, when two parties enter a forward contract, they agree to trade a certain underlying asset on a predetermined date, which is called maturity, for the predetermined price called strike. The settlement of the contract is only possible upon maturity. So if you sign the forward contract, you cannot get out of this earlier. So the end of the contract is only comes when the maturity date comes. So let's have an example. Again, taking into account our wheat example from the earlier today. So again, we have a wheat producer who is a seller, and we have the cereal manufacturer who is a buyer. And our both parties enter the contract, for forward contract, where they agree to trade 5,000 bushels of wheat on April 15th for the pre-specified price of $12, regardless of the wheat price at that moment in this future. So this contract means that in 6 months from now, on April 15th, no matter what happens, the wheat producer obligates to deliver 5,000 bushels of wheat to the cereal manufacturer, and the cereal manufacturer obligates to buy 5,000 bushels of wheat from wheat producer for the price or strike of $12. Okay, so this is how the forward contract particularly looks. Okay, so this is our example, and this is one of the simplest examples of how derivatives can be used to hedge the potential price fluctuations of the wheat, both from a cereal manufacturer and wheat producer. But again, as we talked before, this is a zero-sum game, because if the price of wheat goes up or down during the next 6 months, one of the parties will end up losing their potential gains or overpaying for the product that they could purchase at a lower price. So let's talk about the next one to see how this can be overcome, and how both parties' interest can be taken into account. Now let's talk about option contracts. Option contracts are also contracts between two parties that gives the right but not the obligation to buy or to sell the security of other financial asset. Okay, so it gives the right, but it does not obligate to use the contract which was signed. The aspect which differs option contracts from the previous discussed forward type is an extra feature which allows the owner of the contract to get rid of the contract without having the obligation to use it. So first, let's talk some terminology. For now, simply write it down, because in a moment we will have a deeper look into this. So just write it down, and we're gonna continue with an example. So the call option is an option to buy, and this is what I need you to remember. So please write it down. We're going to talk about the call options. Call options refer to the options to buy the underlying asset. On the other hand, put options refer to options to sell the underlying asset. Maturity date, as we mentioned before, is a date when the option contract expires and cannot be used anymore. If you will hear me saying exercise the contract, to exercise the contract means to use the contract. Okay? If the contract is not exercised, it means that it was not used. The other things that you need to learn is premium. Premium is a prepayment that the price which option buyer must pay to the option seller for an option contract. And premium is not refundable. In a moment, again, we are going to discuss what are premiums, why are they necessary, and who discussed how much premium costs. So let's have a look at the wheat and cereal example one more time. Let's have an example of put option contract first. So if the producer would sign a contract to have a right to sell 5,000 bushels of wheat for the strike of $12 during the next 6 months, the manufacturer would have to, without the choice, buy the agreed amount of wheat for the specified price any time during the next 6 months when the producer decides to exercise the contract. Okay, so this is how the put option works. Even if the price of wheat would fall and the market price, let's say, would be $10, the manufacturer would still have to buy it for $12 since the contract was signed. On the other hand, in the meantime, the price of wheat if the price of wheat increases to 15 per bushel, the producer would have a right to change his mind, and instead of selling wheat to the original cereal manufacturer, they can find another manufacturer and sell the wheat for that to them, all for the higher price. Okay, so in this case, who is in control of the contract is a wheat producer, and the wheat producer decides if they want to exercise the put option or they don't, and they prefer to sell the wheat for a different price to someone else. So you may be asking why the manufacturer would even sign such a contract in the first place if they can be left without the product they expect to purchase. And well, there are a couple of different reasons for that. First of all, purchasing option contracts involve something called premium. Special treatment involves a special price, therefore, the producer pays the manufacturer to sign the option contract, and this upfront payment is called premium. So let's come back to our example, knowing what premium is. Let's say the wheat producer and cereal manufacturer signed a put option, and producer has to pay $1 premium per bushel. Imagine that the price of the wheat during the next 6 months goes to $15 per bushel, and producer decides to not exercise the put option and instead sells his 5,000 bushels of wheat to someone else for the market price of $15. Producer just saved and made $3 per bushel, which is $15,000 by selling his product at a higher price than if he would exercise the initial contract. But on the other hand, he also needed to pay the premium, which was $5,000 to their cereal manufacturer. So his net profit is not 15, but 15 minus 5,000, so it's $10,000. At the same time, the manufacturer still received $5,000 profit, although he didn't get to buy wheat at a lower price. So this is why the cereal manufacturer still signed the contract, although they have an option that at the maturity date, they will not get the product, because in this case, both wheat producers happy because they were able to sell their products for the higher market price, and the cereal manufacturer is still happy because they received $5,000 profit, although they didn't get to buy the product at a lower potential price. Okay, so let's switch it up for a moment now. Imagine that instead of the put option, we sign the call option, which gives a right to the manufacturer to buy 5,000 bushels of wheat at the $12 per bushel price anywhere during the next 6 months. And it obligates the producer to sell it regardless of market price when the manufacturer decides to exercise the contract. Okay? So the cereal manufacturer has a right to buy it, but not the obligation. On the other hand, wheat producer has an obligation to sell the 5,000 bushels of wheat to the cereal manufacturer if cereal manufacturer decides to exercise the contract, the call option that was signed. This time, manufacturer pays the producer to sign the contract a premium of $1 per bushel. So in this case, the wheat producer just got $5,000 premium. If the price drops during the next months and the market price becomes lower, for example, $10, the manufacturer will simply not use his right to buy wheat at $12 and will rather buy it at the market price, which is lower. Producer, however, is still left with extra $5,000 premium simply for signing the call option. However, if the price of the wheat increases, the producer will have to sell and deliver a specified amount at a specified price on the day when manufacturer decides to use his call option contract. So even if the price of the wheat increases for example, $15 again, the wheat producer will still have to sell it at $12 because this is a contract they sign. The deal is the deal, as they say. So you may be wondering now, who specified the premium size in the first place? Why does it make sense to pay this particular amount of dollars for this particular option? And if we would get into this would get us into the really big topic of how the price of the derivatives is calculated mathematically. And trust me, it's such a big topic that let's leave it for another time and simply say that the market decides about the premium. And it's rather not a random amount. So just like the market decides about the price of the stock, the market also decides about the price and the size of the premium. Okay, so besides the practical example with the physical delivery of the product above, options are commonly also used to speculate on the price of the underlying asset and also to hedge the risk of the underlying asset position. Well, speculation is simple, right? Because using the call option on rising prices and put option on falling prices is not the rocket science, but you could also use them to protect yourself rather than speculate. So now imagine that you are holding 100 shares of the company X. Well, before we continue, let me know in the chat box, because I see the chat box. Let me know in the chat box if you are getting value on today's session. Put me some value in the chat box if you are getting value on today's session. And don't worry about the questions. If you have any questions in the end of today's session, we will for sure come back to it. I'm going to answer it. I'm going to make it clear for you if you have any of those questions. Okay, so let me know in the chat box, please. Type it value if you are getting value on today's session. In the meantime, while you are typing, let's imagine that you're holding 100 shares of the company X. And you are holding the shares, but you're afraid that the price of the shares will fall. Now, what do you do? Of course, you can simply sell all of your shares and then eventually pick them up at the lower prices. But if you've ever done this, or if you ever bought shares before, you will know that first, you don't know for sure if it's gonna fall. And you just may lose all your 100 shares of this company. And secondary, all these manipulations are not that easy. And they are quite time consuming, and they also may involve a high tax. Therefore, it's not the best option you can do. Instead, you can purchase a put option on the company X shares to hedge your potential losses. In this case, our underlying asset is a 100 company shares that you are holding. And our put option is on the company X shares that you are holding. Let's have a look at this quick example. Say that shares of the company X are currently trading at $50 and we are purchasing the put option because we are afraid that the price is gonna fall. The put option have a strike price of 45 and the premium of $2. So again, the spot price of your shares that you are holding is $50. The put option that we're purchasing is $45 per strike. And the premium that you need to pay for purchasing the put option is $2 per share. The question is, if the spot price, so your shares price, falls from initial $50 to $40, how much profit or loss would you get? I'm gonna give you a second to answer. Again, our shares price currently is $50. Our strike price of put options are $45. And the premium that we are paying to purchase the put option is $2. So how much we would gain or lose in the situation where the spot price falls from $50 to $40? Let's calculate it. Gain or loss on shares in this case is $1,000. Why? Because we had it was $50 and it falls to 40, so it's $10 difference, and $10 difference on 100 shares is $1,000. So normally we would lose $1,000 if the spot price of our shares would fall from $50 to $40. Okay? We also pay the premium to purchase a put option. So it's another $200 expenses because it's $2 per share and we had 100 shares. So it's another $200 expenses. Now, gain on our put option from the fall of the price is the following. The difference between the strike price of put option and where the price is now is $5. Because the strike price was $45 and the spot price fell to $40. So the difference is $5 and we used 100 put options. So it's $500 profit. In this case, our net loss is only $700. And we just saved ourselves $300 of potential loss by hedging risk on falling stocks using put options. And if you calculate this, you just saved yourself over 30% of potential loss that you could simply have if you would not purchase the put options. And this is an example how you can hedge the risks of the falling stock that you're holding. One important thing to mention is that the price of the option dynamically changes based on 3 different factors. And the put options will have different prices today, tomorrow, and after tomorrow, which makes profit loss vary depending on the purchase conditions. However, the detailed explanation about the options trading we will leave for the separate class in the near future. For now, what is important is to understand how practically you could use the options to hedge the potential risks on your holding stocks. And hopefully this was a clear and helpful explanation. Now we know how we could use the option contracts. Besides option contracts, we also have another type of derivatives that we already mentioned before, which are called SWAPS. And in the previous class, I already had multiple questions. Why would anyone swap one security for another? And now we're going to make it clear and we're going to uncover these hidden secrets of financial markets. So swaps, what do they mean? Fairly means that it fairly means what it sounds like, and swaps refer to the exchange of one security to another. So swap contract is a derivative in which two counterparties exchange cash flows, which are known as legs, over a period of time. Often one leg will be a fixed payment while another will be a floating payment. And I know it sounds a little bit complicated if you hear it for the first time, but don't worry, bear with me. I'm gonna make it super easy for you and simple to understand. So in the end of today's class, you will know precisely how the loan system works around the world. Because swaps lay in the core, in the heart of all loans, credits, mortgages, and other financial operations around the world. And to introduce yourself to the basic of the concept of how swap works, I want to tell you a little story about two boys. Are you ready? Are you ready? I see a lot of you are typing in this chat box, value, 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 value. Well, you can also start typing questions if you have. And we're going to come back to your questions right after we finish the explanation about swaps. Okay, so you can start typing these questions in the chat box already now. I'm happy that every single one of you is getting value. So coming back to our topic, I want to tell you a story about two little boys. Okay, these two little boys, they've got two little toys. And each of them has a wooden horse, except these horses are very different. Peter's horse on our left side has got a rocket on it, and Jerry's horse on the right side has these wheezy wheels which go zooming up and down hills. You know, if you ever had a wooden horse in your childhood, you will know what I mean. Unfortunately, Jerry doesn't like zooming up and down house. So in fact, he doesn't like risk at all. So Jerry prefers to be safe. He'd much rather just sit there on his horse and do nothing, so rocket left and right. Peter, in the meantime, really wants to take the risks that come with having a horse on the wheels. So he says, let's do a swap. And you can see what happens now. Just give me one moment, please. Just give me one moment. And we are back. It was my furry helper. So coming back to our little story. So Jerry must rather just sit on the rocket horse and do nothing, while Peter likes risk, and Peter proposes to do a swap. And now let's see what happens. So here in the swap, the Peter has taken on the risk, and Jerry here has swapped risk for predictability. So the risk of the with the right for the predictability of the ride on the rocking horse, and it's the exchange of the risk for predictability, which lays in the heart of all swaps in the financial system. Okay? So now, how does this work in the business world? Because that was easy example. Now, how does it work in the business world? Let's skip forward 20 years. And we will find out that Jerry now owns a local store and Peter has become an investment banker. Now, Jerry has taken a loan from the bank at LIBOR plus 3, which is fine except for the fact that if you know what LIBOR is a floating rate which goes up and down. Right? So LIBOR means that you never really know how much interest you are going to be paying every month. You may be asking, why would Jerry do this? Well, maybe the bank didn't offer him another choice. So the only choice that he could have to take a loan for his store is a LIBOR plus 3% rate. And since it floats, one month it might be $2,400, another month it may be $1,900, next month it can be $2,000, and this drives Jerry crazy. Firstly, because he hates risk, and he has no idea how these interest rates could go, but secondary, because he loves predictability and he wants to be able to budget properly for the upcoming months. So he goes to his friend and he says, Peter, can you please help me with this loan because it drives me crazy? And our Peter says, I tell you what, why don't we just do what we did when we were kids and swap this? Peter says, what we are going to do is we're going to swap your floating variable rate for a fixed rate of $2,000. Bear with me. Jerry, you are going to pay me, Peter, $2,000 every month instead of paying LIBOR to your initial bank. There is a swap, and now we've got no risk here and predictability. And in this exchange of risk of risk for predictability, which is laying at the heart of insurances, for example, in the heart of credit, default swaps, and all sorts of areas of business that use swap transactions, and you can see how it can really work now. So Peter is getting $2,000 a month from Jerry. But what if the interest rates but he needs to pay the interest rates to the bank, right? Because he still needs to complete the responsibilities for the bank. So he gets $2,000 from Jerry and he pays LIBOR plus 3% to the bank. Now you may be asking, how is this profitable? If the interest rates that he has to pay to the bank is less than $2,000, he gets to pocket the difference. So if he is going to do it often enough, it may bring him a big profit. Okay, he's getting $2,000 and he's paying, for example, $1,900. Or another month he's gonna pay $1,850. Or another month $1,950. So the difference between what he gets from Jerry and what he pays to the bank, he is putting in his pocket. But of course, it could also work another way. So in fact, that if the interest rate is much more than 2%, $2,000 a month, this case, Peter then has to make up the difference and pay the bank. And again, if he does this often enough, he's going to be losing serious money. So therefore, as in any financial operation, swaps has to be used after a well thought out and calculated process. But this was an example, very basic and simplified one, although I think it's really good. It's an example that I took from the Paddy Hirsch. And now you can understand the principle of swaps, I suppose. So let's now have a look at how swaps actually work in the financial sector. Okay? So in this example, in the next one, we are going to take a look at the way that companies can reduce their borrowing costs in a clever way using same swaps as we just discussed. So again, we are going to talk about the interest rate swaps. However, it's only one type of the existing swaps, and there are others as well. For example, there are currency swaps as well, and so on and so on. So there are many different ways to use swaps contracts. In this example, again, we're going to focus on the interest rate swaps. So let's imagine we've got the company, and we're going to call the company A on the left side. On the right side, we're going to have a company B. Because to demonstrate how swap bank works, we will have two clients, company A and company B. In order to expand both of their businesses, they need to borrow money, and let's say they need both $5 million. So company A wants to borrow $5 million from a bank, and company B also wants to borrow $5 million from a bank to expand their businesses. Now imagine that our company A would ideally like to borrow at a variable rate of interest. Perhaps they feel that interest rates are on the way down. So for example, they think that it would be beneficial for them to have a variable rate because they can sign a contract now, but in a couple of months from now, the rate can go down and they will be paying less. So in any case, by any means, company A decide that they want and they aim for the variable rate for their $5 million loan. Company B, on the other hand, would like to pay a fixed rate of interest, and that's a bit like the mortgage market. Some people like a fixed rate of interest over, say, 5 years, and some people are happy to take a variable rate of interest over the same term, and that's a personal preference. Just remember that the company A's aim is to pay variable rate on the 5 million it borrows, and the company B would like to pay fixed rate on the money it borrows, and it's also going to borrow $5 million. And these two companies don't actually know each other. Okay, so we will see how a swap bank can improve both their lives. So, okay, company A goes to its bank and says, Bank A, and company B goes to its bank, which we'll call Bank B. So we have a Bank A on the left side under the company A, and we have our Bank B on the right side under the company B. Okay? And we will count that the company A is a big, well-known and well-established company. So everyone knows about the company A, while the company B is a little bit smaller and finds it's harder to raise money. And so no one knows about company B, they're just starting. So the company A goes to its bank and it's offered the following. Bank A says to the company A, if you want to borrow 5 million from us and pay a fixed rate of 7%. On the other hand, if you'd like to borrow $5,000 loan at a variable rate of interest, you can pay us a LIBOR. So again, they have two options for the company A. It's fixed rate of 7% or it's a variable LIBOR. LIBOR, again, let's remind ourselves again what LIBOR is a variable rate set by the banks between themselves that fixes the variable cost of the borrowing. LIBOR changes potentially, it can change every day, right? When the banks get together and decide like what offer rate is going to be today, so the LIBOR is different every single day, so it's a variable rate. Important thing with this example is a variable rate, so the fixed rate of 7% won't change over, let's say, 5 years. So if the company A goes to the fixed rate, they're going to pay 7% over the same, like over 5 years term. However, LIBOR might be depending on what happens to the bank base rate. So they don't know which percent they will be paying in 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. So, okay, company B goes now to its bank, and company B is less well known, it's smaller, and it just started to prosper. So the bank says, well, if you want a fixed rate, you'll have to pay us 10%, and if you want a variable rate, you'll pay us LIBOR plus 1. So for example, if in 3 years' time LIBOR is 8%, you're going to be paying 9%. If in 5 years LIBOR is 10%, you're going to be paying 11%, and so on and so on. Or you can just take a fixed rate instead. So when you get out of the bed in the morning, you know exactly what you are paying, but that's 10%, and you can take it or you can leave it. You may say that it's unfair. Why the one company is offered 7%, another one is 10%, and this is how the financial system works. If the company is well known, it's easy for them to get a loan because they have more credibility. But the company B is a smaller one, so they have the worst potential rates that they can take from the bank. So you might think that company B wants a fixed rate interest loan, so it just takes 10%, while company A wants a variable rate loan, so it just agrees to pay LIBOR on 5 million. But actually, there is a way for swap banks, which I'll add here in one moment, to help both of its clients have a better rate and make at the same time a little bit of money for themselves. So here what's going to happen. Despite wanting to pay a variable rate, let's assume that we have a swap bank, which is right in the middle of our picture. And the swap bank is sneaky, so it says to the company A, well, look, I know that you'd like to borrow 5 million at a variable rate, but actually, when you take out a loan with Bank A, what I'd like you to do is the exact opposite. So you go to the Bank A and take a loan for 5 million, but pay bank a fixed rate of 7% that they offered you. Then the swap bank goes to another client, company B, and says, hey, I know you want to borrow at the lowest possible fixed rate, 5 million, but bear with me here. Go to your bank and take out a loan at the variable rate of LIBOR plus 1 instead, and I help you to make it better. So what you have so far is two companies that taken out separate loans, both for 5 millions, with their own separate banks and at the wrong rate in both cases. Because remember that company A aimed to have variable rate but took a loan at fixed 7% rate, while company B aimed to have fixed rate but borrowed a loan with variable LIBOR plus 1 rate. So how can a swap bank now give them the rate that they want and reduce the cost of it? And here is the answer. Let's say the swap bank says, okay, I'm going to do a swap now, a totally separate deal with each of my clients. So now the swap has nothing to do with a bank A or bank B. Swap is a totally separate deal and a totally separate contracts, okay, with both company A and both company B. Swap bank says, okay, company B, you've borrowed 5 million from bank B, but you just want to change the interest rate you are paying and you rather pay fixed rate, correct? So we are just going to swap the interest rates to what you originally wanted, so fixed rate. So basically, here's the deal. Swap bank says, we will pay you, company B, LIBOR, and you pay us 8.5% fixed rate instead. Then swap bank goes to company A and says, we'll do another swap deal with you. You pay us LIBOR and we will give you 8% fixed. In other words, what happened, let's say in 6 months, the swap bank will settle the difference with company B, with companies between LIBOR and 8.5% of 5 millions. And every 6 months, it will sit down with company A and swap the difference between the LIBOR rate and fixed 8% of $5 million. It looks complicated, but here is actually a bit of financial magic, and it's going to be much more clear in a moment. Because first of all, the swap bank is also making money for themselves now. Let's have a look at details. The swap bank now receives 8.5% from company B and pays 8% to company A. It also receives LIBOR from company A and pays LIBOR to company B, both on $5 million, so the same amount. So basically, whatever LIBOR is, it flows in and out. So LIBOR goes in from company A and goes out to company B. At 8.5% on 5 million comes in, but only 8% goes out. So the swap bank is making 0.5% as its profit. You see? But 0.5% of the big amount, like $5 million, is worth having. And it makes the same 0.5%, even if they even if their bank rate varies for 10%, for example, because 10% comes and 10% goes, and it's natural. And it's gonna make it still 0.5% no matter what the LIBOR will be. So we now know that swap bank is making money, making 0.5% just by swapping a couple of contracts. But what about the clients? Company A and company B, are they happy with the swap? Well, company B, let's have a look at details. Company B wanted to pay the lower possible fixed rate, and the bank offered a 10%, as low as the bank B was ever going to go. So if the company B would go to a bank, it would not get the better deal than 10%. With the swap, look what's happened. Basically, LIBOR cancels mathematically, because whatever LIBOR comes in, it goes out, leaving plus 1%. So what is company B effectively paying on its original 5 million loan from bank B through is 8.5% plus 1%, and it's 9.5% fixed. So company B is paying 9.5% fixed, and 9.5% is less than 10% fixed. Now company B has saved itself half of the percent, and you might think that's not that much, but again, on 5 million over, let's say, 10 years, that's worth having. That's 5%. In the meantime, company A, on the other hand, always wanted to borrow 5 million at the lowest possible variable rate. Bank A said that if you would come to us, you'll be paying us LIBOR rate, and this is the best what we can do. And now, as a result of a swap, where is the company A? The answer is, in effect, company A is now paying LIBOR for the whole term of their loan minus 1%. And that's better than paying LIBOR. Is it lower than it could possibly got from its own bank? Again, why? Because 8% comes in, but 7% goes out, and it's paying LIBOR. Okay? So now it saves itself 1% and pays LIBOR to the swap bank. Company B is paying a fixed rate of the interest, which is lower than it could possibly have from its own bank. And it works because of something called comparative advantage, and which the swap banks, of course, are the expert in, because the swap bank knew exactly both clients' needs and possibilities. So in this case, swap bank just by swapping a couple of contracts made itself 0.5% interest every single year throughout years and years, and it saved 0.5% for the company B, and it also saved 1% for the company A, and it made sure that both of the companies A and B are paying the kind of rate that they wanted. Company B is paying fixed, and the company A is paying LIBOR. All the swap bank did is to spot the gap and make a bit of money for itself by setting up 2 swap with its clients. And just like that, now you hopefully understand the principle of swap contracts and the benefits of it. And as we talked in the beginning, swap contracts lay in the heart of all the loan system. So hopefully in the result of this class, you understand clearly how loan works, credit, and the swaps, and what is the benefit of it might be for all the parties. Okay? So now, this is the last thing we're going to talk about today. So let's summarize it a little bit. We talked today about the derivatives. So we learned what derivatives are. We learned the types of underlying assets that exist. We've learned about the delivery types, the cash settlement or the physical delivery. And we went as deep as we talked about 3 different types of derivatives: the forward contracts, their swap contracts, and the put and call option contracts. So as a result of today's class, hopefully you understand the base principle of derivatives and different types of derivative contracts that exist. Now, I want to see if you have any questions in the chat box. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. And this session will also be recorded. Okay, the sessions also be recorded and put in the favorites. So anytime you want to repeat it, you will be able to go back to the favorite sessions and rewatch it as many times as you need to be able to learn the information in the smallest details. I have a question by Hazard34 in the chat box. Hazard34 asks, So Peter is profitable because he gets a good deal, but Jerry gets nothing. Well, not so much, because if we are talking about the horse, right? Peter takes the horse, which gives him exactly what he wants. He wants risk, and he gets the horse on the wheels. In the meantime, Jerry wants predictability, and he gets a predictable horse, which is a rocket horse, which just rocks left and right, front and back. If we are talking about the adult offer, Jerry took a LIBOR plus 3, which is a variable rate, which means that he is taking a risk because he doesn't know, okay? He doesn't know which kind of rate he will be paying next month, in 2 months, in 3 months, in 6 months, and so on and so on. So Jerry is driven crazy by the fact that he doesn't know and he cannot estimate and predict how much he will be paying in the next couple of months. Therefore, why Jerry even comes to Peter is because he seeks what? Predictability. So he comes to Peter and they agree that Jerry is gonna pay now to Peter $2,000. Okay? Now Jerry gets what he wanted. He wanted initially predictability, so now Jerry knows that every single month he will be paying $2,000 no matter what happens. At the same time, Peter has potentially an ability to make profits. But don't forget that Jerry, besides the predictability, if the LIBOR will go too high, and the LIBOR plus 3% would be more than 2,000, then Jerry even saves money for himself, because otherwise he would be paying LIBOR plus 3, which for example could be 2,400, and now he's only paying 2,000 because he agreed for this purpose with Peter. So they actually both get a good deal. Hazard34, I hope this answers your question. Let me know in the chat box. Thank you so much for the amazing comments. Massive value, absolutely amazing session. Thank you so much for the comment, support, and love. Let's see if we have any more questions. A couple of more minutes for the questions, and we are going to finish off today's session. So do we have any more questions? And Hazard34, please let me know if you have any questions for today's session. I'm gonna get some water for myself and wait for your questions. If not, we're gonna finish off today's session here. Okay. Doesn't seem like we have any more questions. Therefore, we're gonna be finishing off today's session here. And I appreciate every single one of you joining this session. I hope this SFX Academy, which I'm going to create in the favorite session, is going to help a lot of you to understand the principle of derivatives and to be able to get into the world of derivatives, forward contracts, futures contracts, options, and to expand your potential investment portfolio. On the next session, we are going to dive deep into the futures contract, because futures contract is what we are going to focus on the most during our sessions. So we're going to dive into futures contract, the margin requirements, the specifications, how to trade futures contracts in general. So the next session, we are going to be on Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the same exact channel, and we are going to cover the fourth type of the derivatives and dive deeper into this, and we're gonna go further into the technical and practical trading of the derivatives. Hopefully every single one of you got a lot of value, and I will see you on the next session on Tuesday 9 a.m. Eastern Standard. And this session is going to be recorded and placed in the favorites for your further repetition. So thank you so much. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you on the next class.